guys, you're welcome to Lizama Stitches. My name is Amaka. If you're new here, you're welcome. If you're a returning subscriber, you are highly welcome. And if you're yet to subscribe to this channel, please click on the subscribe button and subscribe so that you don't miss out on any of our tutorials. In today's tutorial, we are going to be learning how to draft a basic skirt. So let's get started. Now the full length of the skirt I'm working with is 23.5 inches and the band length is 1.5 inches. So I'm going to minus 1.5 inches, which is the band length, from 23.5 inches, which is the full length of the skirt. So 23.5 inches minus 1.5 inches gives you 22 inches. So the length of the skirt I'm working with is 22 inches. Now, if your skirt is going to be a bandless skirt, there will be no need for this. There will be no need minusing the band length from the skirt length. Hope you understand my point. So let's get started. Now I've ruled some lines already, so I'm just going to explain the lines to you. Now this is my starting point, which is also going to serve as my waistline. Now this line is half of my hip circumference. My hip circumference is 40 inches. 40 divided by 2 gives you 20 inches. So this line is 20 inches. This is half of my hip circumference. Now this line is a quarter of my hip circumference. A quarter of my hip circumference. My hip circumference is 40 inches. 40 divided by 4 gives you 10 inches. So this line is 10 inches. So this line is 10 inches. This is 10 inches and this is 20 inches. This is 20 inches. So this is half of my hip circumference and this is a quarter of my hip circumference. Now one part is going to serve as the front panel. This part is going to serve as the front panel and this is going to serve as the back panel. Now this is the center front. This is the center front. And this is the center back. Let me indicate it. Let me write it. So this is the center back, and this is the center front. Okay, now the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my vertical hip measurement. Now the vertical hip measurement I'm working with is 8 inches. This varies. Now you can use 8 inches, you can also use 9 inches or 8.5 depending on the person's size. But I'm using 8 inches for my vertical hip measurement. So I'm going to mark 8 inches here. And I'll connect it. So this is my vertical hip measurement. Now from here, now the length of the skirt is 22 inches. So this is the length of my skirt. This line is the length of the skirt. The length of my skirt is 22 inches. Now I'm going to take my waist measurement. My waist circumference is 32 inches. 32 divided by 4 gives you 8 inches. Plus 1 inch for that gives you 9 inches. So this is 9 inches. This is 9 inches. Now on this line, I'm going to take my hip measurement. On this line, I'm going to take my hip measurement. My hip circumference is 40 inches. 40 divided by 4 gives you 10 inches. And this is 10 inches. Now this is 10 inches. So I'm going to connect this point to this point with my hip curve. Just like this. Now this is how I'll do it. Now to impute my dart, I'll need my bust span measurement. My bust span measurement is 8 inches. 8 divided by 2 gives you 4 inches. It gives you 4 inches. So I'm going to mark 4 inches. I'll mark 4 inches here, and on the hip point I'm going to mark 4 inches. So this is my 4 inches, and I'm going to connect it with a straight line. Okay, now on this point I'm going to mark ½ inch on both sides of this line. That is, I'm taking away 1 inch for my dart, so ½ inch and ½ inch. Now this dart I'm taking out, I'm going to close here. I've returned it here because I said my waist measurement is 8 inches plus 1 inch for that. That is what gave me 9 inches, because when I close this I'm going to have 8 inches here. Okay, now on this point I'm going to come up by 2 inches. On my hip point I'm going to come up by 2 inches, and I'll connect this point to this point and this point to this point. So this is my front dart. So the next thing I'm going to do is this. Now on this point I'm going to go up by ½ inch. While on this point I'm going to come down by ½ inch. Now this will help the skirt to sit nicely on the waist. So I'm going to connect this point to this point, just like this. For the back, I'm going to impute my bust span measurement, which is 8 inches. 8 divided by 2 gives you 4 inches. So I'm going to mark 4 inches here. And I'll do the same thing here. And I'll connect it. Now for the back, now on this point, I'm going to mark ½ inch on both sides of this line. That means I'm removing 1 inch for my dart. Now from here, I'm going to come up by 1 inch. On the front, I used 2 inches, while on the back, I'm using 1 inch. So I'm going to come up by 1 inch. The back dart is usually longer than the front dart. So I'm going to mark 1 inch for my back dart. And I'll connect this point to this point, and this point to this point. Okay, so this is my back dart. My waist circumference is 32 inches. 32 divided by 4 gives you 8 inches. So from here, I'm going to mark 8 inches. Plus this 1 inch for dart. This 1 inch I'm removing for dart makes it 9 inches. So I'm going to mark 9 inches. On this point, I'm going to mark 9 inches. Okay. Now on the hip point, I'm going to mark 1/4 of my hip circumference, which is 10 inches, and this line is 10 inches. You know, this line is 1/4 of my hip circumference, so I'm going to connect this point to this point. Just like this, with my hip curve. Okay. Now the next thing I'm going to do is this. On this point, I'm going to come up by ½ inch, just the same way I came up by ½ inch here. I'm going to come up by ½ inch here, so that the front side so that the front side and the back side will be equal. So I'm going to come up by 1/2 inch. And I'll connect it to this point. Now on the back panel, I'm not going to come down just like I did here. I'm just going to connect it to this point. So I'm going to connect this point to this line. Now on the center back, I'm going to impute my zipper allowance. My zipper allowance is 1 inch. From here, I'm going to mark 1 inch for my zipper allowance. And I'll connect it. From this point, I'm going to mark 17 inches downwards for my vent. Now this is optional. It all depends on how the client wants it. Some might want theirs to be high, while some will want theirs to be low. So at times you can just ask the client how they want it, whether they want it to be high or to be low. So, but for this tutorial, I'm going to be using 17 inches for my vent. Now on this 17 mark, on this point where I marked 17 inches, I'm going to mark 1 inch for my vent. And I'll connect it. And I'll bring it down. So this is for my vent. So this is my basic skirt. I'm done. This is your basic skirt. Now, but another thing, you might want to pencil your skirt. If you want your skirt to be a pencil skirt, or you want to pencil your skirt, now this is what you do. This is what you do. Now on this point, you will come in by 1.5 inches. Go in by 1.5 inches. Mark 1.5 inches here. And from this point, this hip point, come down by 1 inch. You come down by 1 inch. And you connect this point to this point. Just like this. Now on the back panel, you're going to do the same thing as well. You're going to, now you go in by 1.5 inches. You mark 1.5 inches, and here you also come down by 1 inch. Still this 1 inch, come down by 1 inch, and you connect this point to this point. You see, this is your pencil skirt. If you want it to be penciled, you cut from here. You cut from here and here. But if you want a normal skirt, like a normal basic skirt, just cut from here. And this is your normal basic skirt. But for this tutorial, I'm using here because I want my skirt to be penciled. Now I'm going to cut it. I'll start from here. Now I didn't add allowance on this paper. I'm going to add my allowance on my fabric. Okay? So when sewing, add your own allowance on your fabric. this is it. So this is the front panel and this is the back panel. So that is just it with this tutorial. Now, when cutting, you're going to cut the front panel on fold. This center back is going to be on fold. Let me indicate. Cut on fold. Okay? This part is going to be on fold for the center front. Then the back, you're going to cut two. You cut two of this. Place this on your fabric. Cut two of this. And don't forget to add your seam allowance. Add your seam allowance here. Add your seam allowance. Here, you're not going to add your seam allowance. You're not going to add any seam allowance here because it's going to be on fold. But on the back panel, you're going to add your seam allowance. Add your seam allowance all around it. But here, there will be no seam allowance here because it's going to be on fold. But add your seam allowance here, here, and here. Here, 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 and here. If you found this tutorial helpful, please give this video a thumbs up. Share this video with your friends. Share this video in your sewing groups. Subscribe to my channel to support me. Subscription is free. Feel free to ask questions. I'll be in the comment section to answer all your questions. We've come to the end of this tutorial. Thanks for watching. See you in my next video. Bye.